Hello, everybody. I'm James Phelps, and it's my brother Oliver, and welcome to the Normal Not Normal podcast.
And in this series, we're talking to some of our favourite people to find out what normal means to them. And we're asking them the question, does normal even exist? And today's guest is an award-winning DJ and producer who didn't exactly have a normal childhood, but we'll get to that a bit later.
That's right. Tiga has been making music since the 90s. He's remixed huge tracks for the XS, LCD Sound System, Scissor Sisters, Moby and Justice. And more recently, he hosted his own podcast, The First Last Party on Earth, which asks major DJs like Mark Ronson, Diplo, Annie Mac and Pete Tong to choose their favourite tracks.
Now, we haven't had many musicians on this podcast, well, apart from Ed Sheeran and Nat Tenner, so we're looking forward to asking him about his creative process and how it feels to put the perfect track together and make a crowd go absolutely wild. I've always wanted to do that.
Oliver and I are actually both big dance music fans, so we're really looking forward to speaking to Tiga and seeing how this kind of music is made as well. So, with all that being said, here is Tiga.
Tiga, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you getting on?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I'm happy to have a conversation. To be frank, it's a little bit weird still. You know, it's a strange time. I'm sure you're well aware.
It's different. I'm getting, to be honest, I'm getting background envy at the moment. I've noticed that yourself and James have got a lot of pictures in the background, and I've just got like a blank wall. So
yeah, you got like
try and work something out.
Yeah, he has a guitar and a telescope, which is like central casting. It's like if they were like quick, make it look interesting. Telescope and guitar,
and a bit of Lego, just prove I'm a real
geek.
You
have Lego too.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Lego.
Tiga, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we know that you've been DJing since you were really young, but you're also a producer, you do great podcast. Can you give us a sense of what your average week or your normal week would look like?
Well, pre-COVID, I mean, I was DJing since I'm about 17 years old. And so I spent probably 2 or 3 nights of every week at parties. When I was starting out, that was in Montreal. And then as I got older, once I hit my, I guess, mid-20s, it was international. So my average week was spent on airplanes, airports, parties, and then, which all seems very, very exciting and romantic right now from where I'm sitting. I can't really believe it happened. But so that was every week. And then midweek would be either studio work, so making records, producing records, running a record label, and all the kind of business and admin stuff that comes with that. Now, in the modern era, I guess it's mostly the same without the traveling and the parties. So it's the same without the fun. just take the fun out of it. No, I mean I've had a lot of time to do a lot of other things that were always on my list, and so yeah, there's a lot of reading and going through records and working on music and stuff like that.
Cool. And do you find that that's almost like your inspirational time, your time to get ideas and stuff like that, or does that just come totally separately?
You mean the time at home, or?
Yeah, like in terms of like the reading or doing stuff like that.
In theory, yes, but in practice, I find, I don't know what it is. A lot of inspiration I find comes from movement. So like a lot of the time, whether that's something as literal as being on a train or an airplane, or just being put in new environments, meeting new people. Actually, now that I've had almost 2 years in my house, it has not been as inspiring as I thought it might be. Where I think you get a lot of inspiration, or I do, from moving around and being exposed to new things and stuff like that. So yeah, obviously I still do get a lot from listening to other records and from reading and from watching films and stuff like that. But definitely a lot of inspiration comes from random connections, random interaction, which in my case was moving around a lot. It's kind of a different headspace, you know. Also, when you're at home too, like I have a family, I have kids and stuff, and home you get into different types of habits, and there's a lot of domestic work. It's slightly different wavelength.
So when you are playing to a crowd, and are you still able to do it at the moment, or is it still quite a lot less than before? Obviously, because of the situation that we're in as a world right now.
Yeah, so it's a little bit hard to even keep track of time, and now it's all a bit strange. But so from March of what was it when it all started? Was that 2020? Yeah, beginning of 2020.
Yeah.
So from March until August, so that's about a year and a half, there was absolutely nothing for me. Nothing. No. I didn't even leave the house really, and there was no live streaming. I didn't really perform even at home, even in private. Like there was no broadcast, nothing. Since the summer, I've done about 8 shows, so there has been enough. That's been almost entirely in America. Miami. It's like Florida's like its own country. There's like the rest of the world and there's Florida. So yeah, there's been enough to kind of remember and to be reminded of how much I love it and how I miss it. There's been a little bit. It's at about 20% of what it was, and it's anyone's guess really what'll happen in the next 6 months. But.
Sure.
Yeah,
So when you're playing to that crowd, how do you know? I've always wondered this with DJs. How do you know when a track is going to work? Like before you even play it for the first time, for example. Like do you demo it to friends, or do you just know that if you put a certain track in your set, you know that will work?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, most of it is just like if the one thing you have after a lifetime of doing what I have, that old 10,000 hours thing, right? Like, what do you actually have that no one else has? I suppose is just that instinct for, you just know it's instinct. I guess it's a bit like being a stand-up comedian, right? Like, you kind of just know, you kind of know it's funny, or you know they'll dance, that's what you have. And so mostly it's just that, it's just a conviction. And also, as is often the case with a lot of things, the conviction and the confidence almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy a lot of the time. I mean, it does count for something. So you have the confidence to put the track in at the right moment. You kind of set it up in the right way. That doesn't mean it always works. So yeah, it's mainly just your taste. And yes, you do battle test things with your friends. So there is a little bit, there's always like an inner circle of people. At any given time, you have 3 or 4 or 5 key friends or fellow producers where you run it by them. I always think of like the Jerry Seinfeld thing, where the comedians sit around a table and like test their bits out. It's a little bit like that. And
yeah.
And every once in a while there are tracks, but sometimes there are tracks which no one likes. Like you yourself still believe in it, and it takes time to convince people that it's good. And there are also sometimes it falls flat as well. Sometimes you play one and they don't like it like you like it.
And what happens when that happens? Like, do you have like a dead set which will work? Do you throw that in straight after, or is it like just believe in it and eventually it will catch on?
Yeah, I mean, it's strange. There's some songs that are immediate hits that just somehow, if it's like on the radio, or like radio tracks. There's songs that you immediately feel a familiarity. You feel like you know them and you love them. There's other ones that are slow builders. And there's some that just you love and other people don't, and you kind of gradually give up on them. I don't know. It's.
I mean, I suppose as well, is it given say when you get it, when it all goes perfect, especially in a gig, and everyone just clicks at the right moment. I can only assume it's the same as telling a joke on stage at the exact. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what it is necessarily what's being done, but to get that reaction from the audience, is probably the same and quite addictive to a point. Yeah,
it's a really, really good feeling. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, the moments, I took it for granted because I played, 9,000 parties or something like that. Like it was my whole life, that was my normal, or is my normal. You kind of take it for granted, and and you're always looking for that excitement in your career, new challenges, all the things that we all do. But I will say that having done a lot of things, the power, the feeling of 1,000 people, whatever, all kind of going up a gear, physically dancing at the same moment in the same way to a particular track, or it's pretty amazing. I mean, it's pretty hard to beat. It's a good one. Okay. Not all those highs are created equal. That's a really, really, really good one. And the strange thing about DJing is I don't think it's not really the same as being a performer, like in the sense that it's not really like you, I think it's a little bit more communal than that. When you have those moments as a DJ, you're kind of more part of it in a way. You're just kind of guiding them a little bit. don't think it's the same. It's not like Bowie standing up there, and obviously it's different. But anyway, so in that sense, you're sharing something. It's really exciting. Fuck, I miss it. Anyway.
I mean, going back to, like you said there, like how you've done obviously a lot. So going back to your childhood, which originally spent in Goa over in India, can you tell us about that and how that influenced obviously your career path?
Yeah, sure. So, well, when my parents started taking me, we traveled all over the world when I was really, really young. So that's like the 70s now, early 80s. It's a long time ago. So we traveled everywhere. My parents were, I guess they would be loosely categorized as hippies, but they really were not hippies. So they're just like traveler types, off the beaten path. And they took me everywhere. And so I've been all over Asia and Afghanistan, like all kinds of crazy places when I was really, really young. And then I don't know exactly how it happened, but they settled on India. We would go to India every year. So up until I was about 12 years old, I spent about 4 or 5 months of the year in Goa. Goa is a part of India. For those that don't know, Goa is like a little bit like India's Miami. I don't know how you would describe it, but it was a place for travelers. It was very liberal, became a bit of a hippie drug party place, going way back. So I spent a lot of time there, and that, how it informed my career, indirectly, well, basically it ties in with the theme of your show, right? So that's how you grow up becomes, I don't use the word normal really, but like it becomes your standard, your standard experience. And if it is extreme by other people's metrics, well, you don't know, you're a kid, So I think how it informed my life and my career, well, seeing grown-ups dancing on acid on a beach was pretty standard issue for me. So I guess that tied in nicely with the rest of my life. So things like hedonism, drugs, radical individualism, adults behaving like idiots. These things were all just standard fare for me. So I guess it created probably a different type of rebellion, but it also created a comfort with that environment that served me well, I guess. And I don't know, but just a very, very cool childhood. It was really exciting and pretty wild, quite stressful, but definitely makes you who you are. But my parents were always cool, with me cool. So,
what was it? What made your parents like? What would you think they were looking for in that lifestyle?
Well, my dad, I think, just wanted to have fun. My dad just wanted to party. I think, like a lot of, the funny thing is when you look back on those, you watch movies of like Haight-Ashbury or whatever, and like the bottom line is the guys just want to get laid. That's the truth. Like they dress up in these costumes, but like the men really are just out to party and have sex and do drugs. And then the women, I think, kind of are going along with it in a way. There was a certain asymmetry there. But anyway, so like I think my mom she was into it. She was going along for the ride. I don't know if that was like her first choice, but she was a very creative person and really into Indian culture and, all those things. And I don't know exactly, but if I had to make it simple, I guess, they came from that generation where their parents were probably pretty straight and you want to take off and explore the world. And, it was a much more, I think it was a more radical thing back then than it is now. Now nobody thinks anything of the idea of traveling now somewhere to party, whether it's Ibiza or wherever, is beyond standard issue. But I think, in 1974 or whatever, it was probably a little bit stranger.
Sure. So then, so you've gone. That's what you've gone up in your early years too, and then you went back to. Oh, did you go back to Montreal, or were you?
Yes. Yeah.
You went back. So you were from there originally, back and forth.
Yeah.
And then you settled back there. Were you around 10 or 11?
Yeah. Well, don't forget we have a really brutal winter in Canada, so that probably,
exactly. Well, that's what I was going to say. Like, what was? It's not just the culture, but obviously the winters and everything like that. That must have been a big culture shock when you headed back there for the foreseeable future.
Yes. Yeah. It was, as a kid, it was difficult because I missed a lot of school and I mean, just to touch on, the theme of your show, this thing of what's normal to you and stuff. And I was thinking a little bit in preparation. And, one thing, when you're a child, one of the most basic things, before you have anything, right? As a kid, you have no credentials, you have no money, you have no career. You have your name, right? It's kind of the first thing you have is your name. And my name is Tiga. So right from the get-go, that was bizarre, right? Like the first thing in any class, they read your names out. Why the hell? What kind of a name is that? You're a weirdo right away, So right. That kind of tied it. That was that and the India thing, and I had super long hair, and I was always the smallest kid in my class, and so like what you're saying, I would return from these trips, and I looked like Mowgli from the Jungle Book, and I was all tanned, and I would come back and it was like an alien coming back to school, and I was always really behind in school, and yet this total weird culture clash. And so I had no chance. I wasn't even close to normal. But so the good thing is, and the name is kind of a good metaphor, because the thing is, you're different, but at the same time, your parents named you. So like, they support you in a way, so it's very, very different, because I think a lot of kids struggle with, they feel different, but maybe they're getting pressure from their parents to be the same, or they're getting pressure to fit in somehow. I was just weird without the pressure or any complex. So I was just like, okay, I'm weird, but this is amazing. Like, when's everyone else going to get on board with what I got going on, So... But yeah, it was a big shock. Coming back to Montreal was always really, really intense. It was pretty crazy.
And do you think though that with that mindset, as you say, like waiting for other people to catch on type thing, that gave you more of a liberating outlook in terms of like?
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, when you start to set up like nights, putting on nights in Montreal, like really being the first innovator of like the night scene there. Do you think that's because you didn't have those blinkers on? Of this is what it should be, as opposed
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I was ridiculously confident as a kid, without much grounds to be. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't like I was a virtuoso or a star soccer player or anything like that. I was just, I was very, very confident. I think that came from what you're saying. I had a lot of support from my parents. I was very, very confident, and I guess the common thread, it's always been like this. I never wanted to be like someone else. I didn't want to really like fit in. I didn't want to be. And as you get older in a musical career, sometimes it's even problematic, because you're so, I'm quite obsessed with being different in a way, which, right. And oftentimes that's an illusion, right? I mean, we're not, how different can you be, but definitely when it comes to making music or throwing parties, whatever, I wanted to stand out. I wanted it to be different. I didn't want to be like everybody else. I felt comfortable like that and confident. And yeah, it served me really, really well. Especially, I have kids now, and I can see, confidence is probably the most important thing when you're young, just to feel good in your own skin, and yeah, to have the confidence where a lot of people don't, at a time when a lot of other people don't, is a big skill. But also too, I'm not painting it like I was some wonder child. I mean, I had loads of insecurities too, and I like everybody, I probably wanted to be a little more buff.
Yeah, well, there's always
I wanted to have some muscles. I wanted to,
So what did you do differently when you were when you were throwing on these nights, which ended up changing? I don't think I'm out of line saying this. You changed pretty much the music scene in Montreal for nightlife. Like, what were you doing differently that other people weren't?
Well, I didn't invent anything different. It was more just about transporting ideas I had seen in other countries back home. So two things, basically. I had seen this. So in Goa, there were parties. Okay. In India, in the 80s, there were parties. They were basically outdoors, trance music, drugs, people dancing, face painting, cows, the whole deal, right? So I had always seen that as a kid, and I didn't quite understand why none of that existed back home. I mean, yeah. Then when I was, I don't know, when I was about 17, I discovered techno and rave music. I just saw some stuff on TV and I heard some CDs and I started to see what was happening in England. So it was a bit, I guess England, it really started in 88 or something like that. I was too young for that. But like by the 91 or so, I started to notice what was happening in the magazines and I heard the word rave and all that. So then really all I did was I just started to build that at home. That's all. And so I was just the first in that sense. And it was also a different world then, right? There's no internet and everything. So you could be the first in a way. And that would last. It wasn't like now where, you know, oh, I found out about something at the same time as 3,000 people. And then 2 minutes later, it's old news and they're on to the next thing. You know, so yeah, we built a scene. We saw me and everything I saw happening in Germany or in England. It was just our dream to build that at home. And I just did that kind of step by step. So yeah, it blew people's minds because here they had no exposure to that ecstasy culture, the graphics on the flyers, the clothing, the music. It was all new and it was massive.
Yeah, I mean, talking about the flyers, how did you get the word out to people? Because obviously a thing in the underground over here in the UK at the time was it was pretty much by secret, word of mouth.
Yeah.
Pretty much illegal raves like in, I don't know, a farm or a car park or something like that. Is that how you went around it, or did you do it a bit more commercialized?
No, it was exactly like that. So I had a pager, you know, do you know what a pager is?
Yeah.
I don't know. I had a pager, no cell phones yet at the beginning. So I had a pager and I would leave a message. The pager had a voicemail box, and I'd leave a message with the directions to the party last minute. And there'd be a corner where people would meet. Sometimes we'd hire buses to take people. So it was like a meeting point and the buses would take people out. And yeah, constant problems with the police. Sometimes they'd shut it down. When I think back on it now, it's pretty insane. I was like 18 years old. I had meetings with police, meetings with lawyers, meeting with fire department, hiring bouncers, dealing with Hell's Angels, backpacks full of money because I'd collect all the money on the door and then I'd dance with the backpack on the, I don't know. It was, but no, but listen, it was, you know, people throw around the word underground a lot now, right? Still there's, oh, this is underground. This is a commercial. Everything now almost is commercial because for perspective, I mean, then you're talking about like no credit cards to begin with, like nothing. There's nothing that touched the real world. We were just literally kids printing flyers at printing shops, handing flyers out, you know, and then you'd find a warehouse or you'd find a venue. And gradually it got a little bit more legitimate as it got bigger in size. But yeah, in its origin, it was really, really very, very underground. There were no rules. It was all being made.
Yeah, and with the lack of rules as well. Like how did you deal with not just the police, but also obviously, as you say, like the Hell's Angels element and stuff like that? That must have been quite nerving at the time.
It was. I mean, thinking back on it now, I don't know what. I just didn't. I don't know what. I don't. I just didn't. I didn't stop to think. You know what's interesting is, well, you guys started young, right? I read a little bit of your...
Yeah.
I think I've talked about this before, but, you know, youth, if you can hit this sweet spot of kind of ignorance and confidence when you're a kid, if you can get in there, there's really a lot of power there because you're kind of like cocky. You just don't know all the stuff that can go wrong. That's the truth. Like you just don't know. You're kind of like... And you think you're all powerful. You have a lot of energy. I had so much energy. I mean, I just could go for days. I just didn't. And yeah, confidence, energy, a little bit of stupidity, some ignorance, mix it all together. And if you get some reinforcement when you're young, that's the key. If things work out early, you're like, yeah, I can do this. But I wasn't thinking about it. I never thought about what could go wrong, or if I did, I didn't care. And I wasn't particularly sensitive to people's feelings it wasn't like, very different from now, or at least I had not none, but I was not woke in the least to you know, for example, I would never think, oh, what if someone could get injured at a party? Like I wasn't thinking that way, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was reading. Is this true?
Sorry.
Well, and you meant that in the best possible way, though, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just now I would. I've matured slowly, but
Yeah. I mean, I always remember going to a rave once, and it was in a car park, in a multi-story car park on like the 6th level, and it got shut down. And you will never know how exhausting it is running, how long those spiral exits to a car park are until you got to run out of one. And
just goes
but
on
as you say,
and
like,
on.
that type of thing. Yeah, but that's a youthful thing. I think I was like, I don't know, 18 or something at the time, and just being like, no, in hindsight, I think back and think, what the hell was I thinking? Let alone the guy himself putting it on and dealing with everything else afterwards.
In hindsight, you think, oh, that's so exhausting. But like when you're a kid, you're not thinking you don't think like that. You have different priorities. Yeah. Well, I mean, it changed radically through the years. Once, for me, I don't know exactly, but once it became a real job. So like once I started traveling the world, playing festivals and doing it every weekend, and you know, you don't know exactly when it changes, but then you're then I remember oftentimes I'd be at giant festivals DJing, and I would think, what a complete nightmare if I was a punter, you know, like how do you get out? They don't have hotel rooms. They don't, like, I would see the tents, you know, those like tent villages at Glastonbury, whatever. I'd be like, oh, like, how do you do it? But that's part of being a kid. And I think it's vital to do it when you're really young. It's something that it's so much fun, and it's so important to just jump into that chaos and just enjoy it. It's really good. It's something it's much easier to do when you're young than when you're older, you know.
Definitely. I used to go to the music festivals a lot when I was younger, and then for my stag do, my bachelor party, we all went back to my old favourite festival, and it was amazing how many backs hurt the first morning, and like there's neck ache and a lot of moaning going on by certain members of my family.
Yeah, there's something about trying to go to sleep and then some geezer at about 4 a.m. taking a pee about 6 feet from your head, the other side of the tent, and you're like, "Oh, come on!"
No, you reach a point where it's actually a nightmare. It's like a catalog of nightmares. But I was always really impressed. I mean, I think England, when we were young, and still, I think England kind of wrote the book on festivals in a way. You know, really, the English have always really done it well. I've always been really impressed, and it's just it's a really nice tradition. I think it's just great, that idea of kind of losing yourself for the weekend and just checking all the bands and things getting like properly messy in a nice way it's a great tradition.
100%. Am I right in saying that you at one point you tried to organise an online rave, but in the early 90s, which kind of seems kind of impossible? What did that look like?
It was no. I mean, we were inspired by like. So in the rave days, we were really, really into like the future, right? I mean, it's changed so much, because now the future has a weird like dystopian thing about it. People aren't. I don't know what it is. We're so wrapped up now. Anyway, whatever. Separate conversation. But back then, cyberpunk books and computer graphics and I don't know, whatever, all these things were like the cutting edge to us, and it was really, really, we were really into it all. There was a band called Future Sound of London. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're fantastic for your listeners. Okay. Really, really good. You know Bicep? You've probably heard of Bicep.
Yeah.
So that style, that quite like euphoric, ravey, kind of hands in the air, emotional dance music stuff. Future Sound of London were probably one of the first, and they did it in a really, really amazing way. They're British. Anyway, they were experimenting with like remote parties and like with ISDN lines, the idea that you could be in one place and broadcast a party to another place. So I was into those ideas, but to be honest with you, it never really. It was theoretical. Yeah. We never really made it. It never really happened.
It's a little bit hard on dial-up, isn't it?
Oh my God, yeah. Dial-up, but, Jesus Christ.
Do you remember that? The
I
noise
do.
Anyway, back in the old days. Anyway, but going back though to a time when you did something a bit more successful, to say the least. Anyway, you say that when you ran the Club Sonia, was that like? was that like in terms of, I don't know, positive input or not, or was it more a case of it became work?
It became work. It was the beginning of the end of the fun. I think the nightclub for me was kind of a low point in a way. It was so I started really just wanting to be a DJ. I wanted to make music, but I also, I guess, had a huge ego, and I guess I was very competitive and wanted to make money as well. And I got into this whole like kind of empire building idea of like, okay, I'm a record store, magazine, clothing company, nightclub. And the nightclub ended up being a very, very big thing. It's quite boring in a way. To sum it up, it was just a bit of a nightmare. I don't recommend owning a big nightclub to anybody. It's much more fun to go to a nightclub or maybe to be a promoter at a nightclub. But actually owning, I kind of hated it. And yeah, that period, which is, I guess, the late 90s, before I started producing my own music, it was just a lot of work and a lot of administration and dealing with, plumbers and lawyers. And I was still very young, and it was not what I had signed up for in a way. And it had some positives. I learned a lot, but it really turned me off a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah, as you say, it kind of goes from like your passion. And I suppose if you say to someone, "Oh, I'm going to have my own nightclub," and as you say, then you don't really think, you're thinking of more the audience in some state of euphoria as opposed to we need to call a plumber, we've got a burst pipe. It's quite
exactly.
It's quite a different.
Oh no, it's the complete opposite. I mean, I don't think that's the case for anybody. It depends. I was never a big drug person. I wasn't like a big probably the big advantage to owning your own club is like, doing drugs and going crazy and ha ha ha, this is my place, like the caricature but that wasn't me. So I wasn't even really getting that. Right. I wasn't even getting that out of it. My partners were, but I wasn't. I wasn't even into that. So if you're not into that, really don't open a club.
Very good point. A couple of weeks ago, I went to see Pete Tong and the Heritage Orchestra doing all the old Ibiza anthems, but with it, and it was such a good, like it was one of those. I think I'm at that age now where everybody's like, oh, like they haven't heard the song in a couple of years, but it was just such a great atmosphere, and it really did reignite my love for that era of dance music as well. And also seeing an orchestra play, it just brought a whole new way of how it's put together. Yeah, like it really blew my mind. But anyway, I was going to go into it, that I got there because a good friend of mine, she was the opening act, she was DJing to start the night. But I know there aren't that many huge female DJs. Is there any, and I know that quite a lot of our listeners are women. Is there anything that you could recommend for them to break into that? Or?
Well, first of all, it's actually not really true anymore. There's a lot of top women DJs now, and I think most of my favorite DJs just happen to be women right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it did. So yeah, I mean it was traditionally a real boys' club. I mean all through the night. I think it wasn't just on every level. It was just pretty messed up in that department. I think it was quite. I think that started. The record stores, which were kind of the headquarters, were really laddish. It was a very kind of like that's just kind of how it was. Not everywhere. There's a big irony with dance music. Is dance music started as a very gay, very for people that didn't quite find a home in other places, and that was incredible. When I got into it, it was kind of like that. Gradually, it got quite white male kind of vibe. As that, I guess it gets co-opted a little bit. Anyway, but no, the past years have been really, really good. I mean, there's a lot of way more diversity and way more women, and it's just been incredibly positive for the scene in general. I think some girls. I don't like to say it like that, but some women DJs that are worth checking out. Nina Kravitz, she's Russian. She's fantastic. She's one of the best in techno specifically. Nina Kravitz, Helena Hoff. Oh my God, there's a lot. The Blessed Madonna, High. There's a lot of. I think they're kind of. I don't want to say they're running the show, but creatively they're definitely a lot of the best right now. And I don't know if the second part of your question was about like how to get into it for someone at home, whatever. Yeah, I guess that's like with any creative career, it's you have to like work really, really hard. You have to, I think, celebrate whatever it is that might make you different, because there's such competitive fields, so how, don't try to copy or be like someone else, I guess. That's romantic view of it, but I still think that's true. Unfortunately, there's a lot of luck involved in any creative field. How do you get, who hears you at the right time? Who do you do a track that, like for me, my whole career was going one way, and then I made this one song, that Sunglasses at Night, in 2001, and the track just blew up, and every door was open to me. But it's a lot of good fortune, so I don't...
In terms of learning your craft, in terms of like especially now where it's more like, obviously it's more technical and everything like that, in terms of like laying tracks and stuff, as opposed to, say, more technical, more computer based, shall we say. Is there certain, how would you learn that now in terms of type thing? Would you go to university to do it or anything like that, or is that quite a conformist way of doing things, like going to school to learn a craft?
No, I don't. It's hard for me to say. Things have changed so much. I mean, it was not a career when I started. At no point was it something you could never imagine paying your bill.
There's not like something you could say to a teacher at school.
No.
I'm going to be an international DJ.
No. You wouldn't even put the word international with DJ. I mean, at the very beginning, it really was about just getting closer to the music, right? So I was a kid who loved music. We all know kids like that at school. Oh God, you got to listen to this, or you want to share, you want to brag. I discovered this, but that's who I was, right? So I was just constantly, and I just wanted anything that could get me closer to more access to the music, find better records. I probably would have been happy just working at a record store if somebody would have given me a job, but nobody would. I tried to get a job at my college radio station, and they said no. So that really pissed me off, but that was a very, very different era. Now it is completely a respectable craft with schools and managers and agents, and so no, I think learning is always good. I kind of wish I had learned more. I don't think it's conformist. I think if you have an opportunity to, let's say, go to engineering school, if you can learn, there are dangers with learning. It can mess you up. It can create, you don't want to, you still have to stay wild and stay kind of creative and stay a bit weird, but definitely learning things is good. I wish I would have learned something. I wish I had no structure. I dropped out of university, and I'm an extreme case of just winging it all the way, complete hustle all the way. But that can work. It definitely can work. But it's kind of funny because I went to quite a posh high school, like what you guys would call. You're Harry Potter people, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say you went to a genuine boarding school.
I went to one of those schools with the shirt and tie, like English style, all boys. This is like teenage years, and the reason I'm bringing it up is because I got invited back to the school by the headmaster to give a speech to the graduating class. I was basically the only kid that ever came out of the school that wasn't like a politician or a lawyer. So I was like I'm like their poster child for creativity, right? So I got invited back to the school and I gave a speech. And it's funny because the speech I gave was very much like what I'm telling you now about stay weird, be an individual. But after the fact, I was like, what are you talking about? You're ruining these kids' lives, because it's it's not, it's a 1 in a million thing. You can't, these kids. So I know a lot of them that gave up on their $1 million educations and just now they're like interns at a record label or something. But anyway.
Right. Yeah. But I suppose as well, it's nice. It must have been nice for them to hear that if they've been in a very, certainly for North American standards, structured environment in terms of the uniform
Yeah.
Whereas that's pretty standard even in state schools over here. But yeah, like being told you dress this way, you do this, do that, and then, as you say, and then if you're the poster guy there for creativity,
I think
coming back.
Yeah, well, the kids loved it because obviously, very few kids. The kids don't dream of being, accountants or they want.
No, right.
So I think they did. I think they probably saw a glimmer of hope, like, whoa, maybe I could still have fun when I'm a grown up.
Headmaster's there pulling his hair out on the corner, like what?
Yeah, I actually had he was a good guy, that guy. The headmaster before him, I'm just old enough that the year before I entered that school, they were still caning people.
Oh wow!
Which is pretty mind blowing. Like I just caught the modern era. It was like that real old, like Pink Floyd, The Wall style.
Yeah.
It was crazy, that school. I remember on Remembrance Day, they would read out the names of all the kids who died in like World War I and stuff, and it'd be like, anyway, that's depressing. Forget it. Wow, that made me sound crazy old. I can't believe I just World War I reference.
I was going to say, just to clarify, you didn't go to school with anyone who served in World War I. So
just to clarify, I'm 104 years old.
Yeah.
I look really good for my age.
But talking more modern stuff, as you mentioned it earlier about obviously doing being a podcaster as well. First last party on earth, and we've been listening to quite a lot of it recently, James and I, where you basically are sitting down with some of the best musicians in the world, especially in your scope of field as well, and you're built all around the question: what would you play at the last party that you DJ on Earth? So, question is. What have you learned while making this podcast?
Okay, thank God. I thought you were going to ask me what I would play, which I can't answer.
That's a really good follow-up question, actually. Yeah.
No, I can't. No, your question's way better. I've actually learned quite a lot. I mean, I've learned to listen to people, which sounds obvious, but I spent most of my life just blah blah, either talking too much or thinking I was the center of attention or being interviewed. And it was, and it's an incredible, it's just it sounds so obvious. I sound like a psycho that I even have to say it, but just listening to other people and you get so much wisdom from that. And so that's been the number one thing. And it was almost deliberate. I wanted to do it to learn to be a better listener. And, but also I've learned, from everybody's stories, you learn. Trying to think. There's been a lot of specific things, but it's hard. But every person basically has this incredible story. I mean, almost all artists, especially, maybe everyone, but I think artists, to rise to a position to really build a career out of your art is quite rare, and it's really difficult. And almost everyone's story is pretty amazing and pretty interesting. So. I found a lot of comfort from it. Also, I get a lot of comfort from hearing other people's struggles. Like, you're not the only one who's crazy. You're not the only one who deals with all these things, the confusion, the difficulty in making music, trying to come up with ideas, feeling your ideas are boring. Like, all these things, the standard things that artists deal with, it's quite comforting to hear it from other people. And also, too, in the pandemic especially, just conversation is great because things get a little dry and you miss people and you miss sitting down with friends. So it was like it's like I bought my friends. I'm like, wait a second, I'm going to make a list of 15 people to become friends with them. So,
was there any reason why that was the topic? The topic what came into your to base it around?
Well, I copied a lot of it. I was really in love with Desert Island Discs. So all the years of touring, I got heavy into podcasts because touring is really, really hard. Planes and every day, no sleep. And I spent hundreds of hours just kind of spaced out with podcasts running, just like quite comforting. You kind of doze off and and I got really into Desert Island Discs for a while, specifically Kirsty Young era. She's just she made a big impression on me. She's so erudite and so empathetic and so clever and just so good.
Her voice is so peaceful, isn't it?
It just 10 out of 10, just incredible. And also just the artistry of guiding the conversations, you know, when to accelerate, when to slow down, when to just handled with such grace and intelligence and just whoa. So that actually kind of gave me the idea. And then specifically, I wanted to stick to music. I think talking about music is a beautiful thing to talk about because people's guard really drops when they talk about music. It's like a different part of your brain. The reasons why you love a certain song, the memory is attached to it. Because I found that, you know, a lot of the time you want to talk about politics or climate disasters or, you know, there's all these heavy things going on. But if you go at them direct, it's tricky because people go into kind of routine speeches and it ends up kind of on rails. Nobody even means to, but when you start with music, I find things often stay very positive and you still get to some of those other issues. It just happens in kind of a nice way. I know for myself, music's probably been the best thing in my life. It makes me a better person. When if you share your favorite songs with someone, they're probably going to get the best part of you, the best side of you. You know, it's just like, you're like kids playing together, really. And so it brings out a really, really nice side in everybody. And yeah, it's a nice thing. Plus we're all mostly musicians, so we have something to talk. It's quite easy to talk about. Yeah.
And so what's next for you, Tiga? Because I say Oliver and I have been listening to your podcast for a couple of, well, we pretty much binge. It's like Desert Island Discs. I binged most of them in one go. I kind of go through.
Thank you.
I can't just listen to one. I need to binge them. So I really enjoy, especially the Mark Ronson one. I found that fascinating.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
And did you find a bit similar to him in that you moved from one country to another? And
I did actually. Yeah.
Is that something that you quite enjoyed with the podcast? Is that you can relate to things which you didn't think you would?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you, because when someone says, if someone says they listen to your show, that's cool. But if someone says they binge, like, I know what it takes. Binging is the ultimate seal of approval, you know, because there's so much competing for your time. And I'm into a podcast right now. This one, The Rest is History. Do you know this one? It's a history podcast. No. It's really good. It's a British one. It's really good. It's like just having some really smart friends. You should check it out. The Rest is History. Sure, yeah. Anyway, but history, okay. Mark. It was really nice to talk to Mark, and I found a lot of similarities. What's really nice is when you do, as a musician, as an artist, I mean, everyone has these insecurities about what you're good at or what you're not, and you know, and I think a lot of people, it's so typical. There's feelings of, maybe I'm not quite good enough at this. And when you talk to other people, you realize everyone has those and how they've adapted to that. It gives you a lot of confidence. So like, you know, Mark, for example, is an incredibly successful producer and an incredibly accomplished musician. And then, but hearing that actually he goes about making music he's really had to adapt his skill set. You know, he doesn't feel ultra confident, let's say, as a musician. He approaches it more like a DJ, with using the language of a DJ, like taking this reference or sampling this record. And that was really cool for me because that's very much how I see things, you know. So yeah, but I like Mark. I love his delivery. He's quite like, he's got this quite deadpan kind of, and he's got this quite weird, I love his accent, and yeah, it's great. I love the talk with Diplo. And you mentioned Pete Tong. I love Pete. I love talking to Pete. Pete's crazy because I spent years, first you listen to Pete on the radio, everyone knows him. And then oftentimes I would do these short interviews. He would have me on his show to introduce a record or something. And I never quite got a like understanding of Pete the person, and then we kind of became friends, and I love talking to him on the podcast. And he's somebody I just really like him. A real soft spot for him as a person. It was a lot of fun.
And did you find that talking to people who you a bit like Pete Tong, like who you'd spoken to beforehand, but in doing a podcast and interview, that you speak about stuff that you'd never really talk about in general chit chat? In
Oh
terms
yeah,
of like where you get, because we found that when we were interviewing different people who were in, like I say, the Potter films with us, we'd never asked them when we were filming, so what was the audition process like? You'd never get to anything like that. Or what was it like when you went home from that situation? So it's just, so how's that been?
Yeah, probably very similar to your situation where, so, you know, you there's a bit of a conspiratorial feeling, right? Because you share these things, right? So they're speaking to you. If an actor or someone from the series talks to you, they're going to give you different stuff because they assume a baseline understanding. So you get much more of a confidant vibe. You know, it's not the same as when they're talking to a journalist. So it's the same for me. It's nice because, so partly the idea is the types of conversations we would have after a show or when you bump into someone at an airport. It's partly that. And also too, I like to exploit the fact that they can trust me that I understand what they're saying, that I've been through a lot of the same things. And, you know, it's nice. And there's not much ego, you know, I like to set it up so, you know, no one's trying to like, you're trying to disarm this. No one's trying to prove themselves. You know, nobody has to come on the show and say, yo, these are all my hit records or anything like that. So it's a good starting point.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, anyway, we're going to go back to, I know you mentioned that you don't like the word, but what does normal mean to you?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's not so much I don't like, it's something I never thought about really. You know, I just, like I said, growing up, I always felt I never really fit in. And I was lucky in the sense that it didn't bother me that much. I mean, obviously you want to be, well, okay, what the word means to me, I guess, is just, it's whatever's statistically common. You know, it just is what is the most common, I guess, becomes normal. But for me, you know, I think one of the original meanings of the word common or synonym, it's vulgar. You know, like when you think of there's something about it that's not really to aspire to. It's more something that is quite, I don't know. I never saw that as something I wanted. You know, so yeah, I don't know. I wanted to be different, and if there is such a thing as normal, I never gave it much thought, and I'm certainly not interested in it. You know, the people that I always loved and looked up to, like Prince or David Bowie or Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan, or, you know, there was nothing typical about it. You know, now, but at the same time, as you get older, I was thinking about this normal, not normal thing. You know, that you realize, like, let's say a great song, one of the things that makes a great song is it touches on something that is relatable. And those things, in a sense, are very common because they're shared, you know. So, like, you know, there's experiences that are quite typical but also very profound. So in that sense, that part of normal I'm fine with. You know, we all, you know, shared, like you were saying, at a party, you know, when you're just all like hands. That's, in a sense, that's a normal, like a typical thing, but it's beautiful. It's incredible, you know. I don't know. But I was just lucky that one thing you hear a lot, I'm sure you guys get it a lot. What I really feel bad for kids who, and it's so common, and I think it's probably the saddest thing in the world, the idea of shame. You know, if shame is introduced as a concept, so, and it's beyond common and it's beyond sad. It's so damaging, which is like, you know, you feel different. That's one thing, but then you feel a negative feeling about it. You feel, oh, I'm supposed to be something else, or I'm supposed to change, or there's something wrong. And I was just lucky. I don't know exactly what was at work, but I never felt any of that. So I was able to just be myself, I guess, you know, which is just good.
Yeah, no, very, very well put as well. It's like you say, it's. Imagine what everyone could do if they didn't worry. They weren't worrying about what people may view of what they're doing. Oh my God!
Yeah. Well, it's probably that's like the original sin, right? I mean, that's what, because I'm sure every kid, you know, if there was a way of tracing it to that first time you're made to feel ashamed of something that before that you never thought anything, whether it's being naked or how you look, or someone says you're fat, or someone points out something you didn't even think about. I remember one time my best friend said, I think he said, "Whoa, you've what did he say? Your arms are long," or something like that. I was like, "What? Really?" Or you have big ears. You're like, "Oh shit, I have big ears." Then depending, and I mean, anyway, that's nothing. Obviously, the classic is, if your dad says something, or your mother says something, and then those things you spend your whole life adapting to and navigating, and so that's why the whole normal thing obviously is such a minefield. It's good you guys are doing this show, because I'm sure it's something that's what you guys explore, and it's so important.
We've been quite lucky in that we've normally asked the guys listening as well to, we ask these questions to them, and what a normal person who is listening in, I don't know, Sri Lanka compared to someone listening in Nebraska in America, like it's completely, their normals of how they go about their life are very different, but to them it's we're having really good fun exploring it. But going on to another question, and so what would be the most normal thing about you, would you say?
I thought about this. I think the most normal, like, whatever that word means.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I really love sweets. Like, I'm
Yep.
like a real, just like classic. I never outgrew, like, just obviously chocolate bars, and I really love football, which was quite in a quite just regular, outside the pub, talking about just garbage transfer rumors or fantasy football. Or
Yeah.
So I think that's quite non-controversial. But I mean, the thing is, my life became very, well, probably in ways that you understand, like you guys as actors, when you have a life that is extreme in some ways, like, not a 9 to 5, or so my life was pretty extreme. I mean, if I drop my kid off, let's say at school on a Thursday, and I'm going to Dubai that night, and I'm up all night, and then the next day I'm in Madrid, and then I'm back home on Sunday. So people don't quite get their heads around. It's definitely abnormal in that way. It's rare. So I think what did become normal for me is, because there's that extreme going on, in my time off, I became quite into, like, sleeping, for example. Like, things that people would think are really, really boring, for me are really exotic. Like, I still love sleeping. I sleep so much, you wouldn't believe it. Like, and in COVID, it's crazy. I sleep like 10 hours a night, like routine, just like, I'm and just because it became exotic, it became something I was denied for so long, and people would see it as boring. Yeah, so I don't know. Those are some normal things, but I don't know.
I don't know with you saying that, though, Tiga. I was going to say, like, the follow-up question I was going to say is, what is the least normal thing about you? But I suppose pre-pandemic, the least normal thing, conventional, would be your normal in terms of, as you say, dropping your little one off at school, then going to 2-3 different time zones, then coming home.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I had to sum up, the least normal thing probably is just the amount of time I've spent between the hours of 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. at a party somewhere in the world. It's as simple. It's like 4:30 in the morning. I mean, just in Spain alone, I've probably been somewhere with thousands of people going crazy at 4:30 in the morning, 300 times. And it's thousands of times. So I think that's probably, when it's all over one day, that will be one thing that was definitely, just uncommon. And so, and I think also to get a little bit more personal, it's strange because I noticed this when I stopped DJ for a while. I realized that I have a comfort level in that environment that's pretty crazy. Like, I actually, like, when I walk into that room and it's so loud and so intense and sweat, and even if I'm totally like straight like this, like I walk in, I just left the hotel and I had a shower and I'm all proper, but I feel quite at home with that. And that's something I think is also pretty rare. I also love that music. I'm really, I realized as I got older, like, because I listen to music in the car, and I have two sons, and they're like, what the hell are you listening to? They're like, what is this crap? They're like, why is it 16 minutes long and why is nothing happening? And I realized that I have a genuine love for just very repetitive, electronic, kind of strange music also. Those things are not so normal. It's super normal. A lot of really crazy normal stuff happens when you become a parent, I think, in a nice way, because you
right.
What you want is just, it's such a universal. I just want your kids to be happy. And that's such a universal feeling. I imagine, to use your example of Nebraska or Sri Lanka, that's probably one of the most universal things in the world, is just, you simply just want your kids to be happy and to be free of suffering and just to feel good. And so that you start to feel pretty normal in that respect. It's something you can definitely talk about with anybody.
What is your favorite book?
I think my favorite book is probably Waiting for the Barbarians by South African writer Coetzee, J.M. Coetzee, okay. I think.
Okay.
Fantastic book. A good one if anyone is scared by bigger books, because it's quite a short one. It's an awesome read. And my favorite writer, I don't know, I also like Graham Greene a lot. Orwell and Graham Greene are probably my favorite writers.
Okay, cool. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is, so in India, in Goa, there is a little restaurant called Joe Bananas. Okay, nobody will know it, but it was like the center of my universe when I was a kid, and I still went back there up even like a few years ago. It was like a little hippie place where everyone would get their mail. You would actually get your mail there because there was no mailboxes. Anyway, there you can get like a fish thali. It's like a fish plate with some little pickles and bhajis and rice and all that. And that is definitely my favorite meal in the world. And I would probably eat it every day. I'm fine to eat the same food all the time. I like to, but that's my favorite.
You know what yeah. What is your favorite film?
My favorite film? Oh, is Blade Runner. I'm a big Blade Runner fan. I love Blade Runner. Yeah, great movie.
Whether you can answer this question, I'm not sure, but what is your favorite song?
Yeah, this one I struggle with always. It's one of those ones you should just, by now, I should just take the time.
Right now.
Yeah, no, I have an answer. I have a real answer.
Okay.
It's a Kiss by Prince. I don't know if you know that one, but it's...
Yeah.
The reason I go with that one, I mean, there's so many, and I'm a big Leonard Cohen fan. I'm a big... Anyway, the reason I go with Kiss by Prince is because it's fun, and it's just such an incredible dance record. It's everything. It's like a perfect pop record, a perfect dance record. But ultimately, I think the thing I value philosophy and thinking and all those thinking. I value thinking. I value all those things, but in the end, like music that makes you just feel good and want to dance and want to party and be with your friends and stuff, is that currency, I think, for me is top right now. So Kiss by Prince. And Prince is number one. Prince is a great example. Prince might be the ultimate example of letting your inner freak, your inner weirdo just go to the maximum.
Yeah.
And just how, and ultimately the irony of how people really respond to it. People love it if it's done in that genuine way and if you're talented. But just that, yeah, in the end, it's just, yeah, Prince is, don't get me started.
Tiga, thank you so much for joining us. That was absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for, I really appreciate when people listen to the show, the podcast. And hey, I have to say I know one Harry Potter. I just have to say my one Harry Potter. The only.
Okay.
So my son was super into Harry Potter for a while. And my son, I think, thinks of himself as like a bit of a bad boy. He's like a bit of a hard man. So Slytherin, right? That's like the bad guys.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
So
yeah,
he's
yeah.
I want to give him a shout out as pure Slytherin. He had that little snake on his backpack at school for a while. I would be remiss if I didn't throw that out there somehow. So I think, anyways, that's it.
Good.
That's all I got.
No, that's no problem. That's no problem at all. But no, it's been great speaking to you, Tiga, and
Cool.
thank you once again.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really like the show. I was listening to some of the episodes. I appreciate it.
I think that was such a great chat, and love hearing as well how Tiga was based all the way back to how his parents basically taught him when he was in Goa to just embrace weird and embrace being different. I think that was such a really great message, and obviously just goes to show what happens when you do that.
Very much so. And I mean, we recorded for a lot longer than that interview came out on here, but he was such a nice bloke, both on camera as he's recorded and off, like very personable. So it was really great to speak to him, and I loved hearing about the first parties that he's organised before anyone was doing that thing. Here we got how he carried all the money from the ticket sales around in his rucksack on his back. I mean, that's insane.
Yeah, and I think also listening to him say that is pretty much showing like how it goes full circle in ways of using a new meme, as it were, a new type of thing to get people together, to get people enjoying the company, the sound, and everything like that. From, as you say, when he was organising his first parties, like the mega parties, and now doing it obviously on his podcast, and how that taught him how to listen to other people and their side of view. And I think it's such a great topic matter as well that he brought up about the, what tune would you play on your last party on Earth? We talk about your 3 a.m. questions. There's one there. Like, I know we say what's your favourite song, but just like, okay, it would lead into that song, and would that keep people on there? Brilliant.
So you can actually find Tiga's podcast, First Last Party on Earth, which is on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Look like this one, really. So we really recommend checking it out. It's a great listen. So please give it a try. But I thought I could come in at the very end with my very own Did You Knows, this time about music, Oliver. Did you know?
Yes.
Music helps plants grow faster.
Really?
Yep. So there was actually a study conducted in South Korea where they studied 4 different classical pieces, including things from Beethoven and people like that, and they found that the music actually helps the pace of the plant.
Wow.
Did you know listening to music is proven to help you exercise better?
Is that where you get the thing where it just says, is that where you get like the power song, as it were, because you get into a different trance, as it were?
Pretty much. I think it just keeps you motivated and everything. Did you know as well, I'm sure people know this, listening to music causes you to drink more in less time?
Yes, I can believe that. Actually.
Heavy metal and classical music fans have similar personality traits.
Yeah, to jump in on that, right? I remember hearing somewhere once. I remember sitting on an airplane and chatting to a lady who was a paediatrician, and we were talking about there was, when you can choose like music on the plane type thing, and I saw that she was looking at it. And I don't know how we got talking about it, but she said, yes, if you actually play either classical music or heavy metal music, obviously not really loud, but to young children, like babies and toddlers, they react with it really well, and it actually calms them down a bit.
Well, apparently, so this was done at a university in Scotland, and they interviewed over 36,000 music fans, and they discovered that apart from probably the age difference with the two, both the lovers of both metal and classical have pretty much identical traits. They tend to be very creative, very at ease with themselves, and introverted.
Yeah, that's probably right, actually.
This is going to be a bit controversial, I reckon, but did you know the British Navy use Britney Spears songs to scare off pirates? So, according to reports, British naval officers play Britney Spears' songs to scare away Somali pirates off the coast of Africa. Her song "Oops, I Did It Again" and "Baby One More Time" are the songs they use the most. The rationale of playing these songs is because supposedly Somali pirates have a strong dislike for Western culture and music, which makes Britney Spears and her songs a perfect fit to make these bandits move on as quickly as possible.
Is that real?
Apparently so.
Do you think when they're on shore leave, if they're in like a cheesy disco and a Britney song comes on,
Comes on, they're done.
Oh, God, here we go. They leave as well. Do you think?
Maybe she does have some good songs though. And finally, because I'm a space geek, did you know that Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield released an entire album of songs he recorded in space whilst on the ISS? Now, he spent over 144 days up there, and he recorded 11 original songs, and the album is very, very aptly named Space Sessions Songs from a Tin Can.
Yeah, because he did his Space Odyssey, didn't he? He played that on his guitar up there.
Very good.
Yeah. Always remember being lucky enough to meet him.
I know, geeked out.
Yeah, good on it. Anyway, guys, before we go down memory lane too much longer, thank you so much for joining us this week. And just remember to keep sending your story times, your questions, your did you knows to the normal email address, which is normalnotnormalpodcast@gmail.com. That is normalnotnormalpodcast@gmail.com. And guys, whatever you are doing this week, stay safe and we will see you next week.
Very much, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you very much for Tiga again. It was lovely to speak to you. Have an amazing time and we'll speak to you soon.
Slam dunk, are you ready?